want to speak?
Just want to welcome you all. My name's Samia. I'm Deputy Director of the...
Hold on just a minute. And may I have a paper to kind of draft just for you?
I just want to thank you all for coming. My name's Samia, I'm Deputy Director of the Muslim Institute, and we're delighted to have these auspicious speakers, although our speaker seems to be on his way. He's here, I can assure you. I just wanted to say just a couple of words about the Muslim Institute. I won't say too much, just to say that we're an organisation that promotes critical thinking. We have some of our brochures in the corner there, so please do feel free to pick one up. I'm going to pass around these fellowship forms, so do think about becoming a fellow of the Muslim Institute. You get lots of benefits, lots of books being sent to you, lots of participation in great events such as these. And essentially what we're trying to do is to promote dialogue, conversation, discussion about Islam, about sort of affairs, global affairs concerning Muslim communities. And I think it's a really important space for discussion, for speaking openly and honestly about controversial issues. So do take a look at our brochure. We also put a couple of copies of our journal in quality, which are to be paid for. And I do hope you enjoy this event. Another thing I want to mention, slightly embarrassed about, is we have some food. We have some, due to an administrative error, not of my doing, there are some non-halal meat sandwiches in the corner. So just to warn you, they're in the corner and being covered up, but the rest is halal and fish and vegetarian. So just so you know.
You mean non-halal pork?
There is some
carcass
pork in there. Yeah. There are about five sandwiches out of about 50 that you can't eat.
Okay.
Just so you know. I'll just give you
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Muhammad Amin. I'm a fellow of the Muslim Institute, and this is my first event that I've attended. At 11:30 I was asked to volunteer to stand in for the chairman and half of others. We're going to start with a talk by Edip Yuksel on the 19th theory, which will last until 1 o'clock. And then we will have some questions from the floor. Lunch is at 1:30, and we'll resume at 2 o'clock, and we'll go through the timetable at 2 o'clock at that stage. First of all, I'd like to start by just introducing Edip Yuksel very briefly. He's an American intellectual who was born in 1957 and is considered one of the prime figures in the modern Islamic reform and Quraniyun movements. He's the author of many books on the Quran and Islam and has gained much attention through his works and speeches. His main aim, as stated throughout his writings, is to spread an Islamic understanding that is rational, progressive and humanistic, which in his eyes can only be gained through accepting the Quran as the only divine authority. He's also a promoter of theistic evolution, an understanding he gets from science and the Quran instead of the Islamic belief in creationism. Specifically, Yuksel is critical of Islamic creationists such as Adnan Oktar. Yuksel is a former member of United Semites International. Next to his activities on Islamic reform, he teaches philosophy and logic courses at Pima Community College. He currently lives in Tucson, Arizona. Yuksel is an ethnic Kurd and was born in Turkey. Over to Edip Yuksel.
Thank you very much. First, a little correction. I don't consider creationism is opposite, contradictory to evolution. I believe that God's creation is through evolutionary system, and that is specifically mentioned that God created the universe in 6 stages. And of course, we see we are not come to this earth with parachute, correct? Or suddenly, boom, we don't come into existence. Even in our mother's womb, we pass through a kind of evolution. It is not, genetic evolution, but we evolved there from sperm and embryo, fertilized fetus, and then we become this. Therefore, the dichotomy, the idea that creationism versus evolution is really a very simple way of looking at issue. Okay, and Farouk. Huh? Oh, this is, you talk more than I do, but let's, I know time is important. I think you'll be, thank you very much, please. And inshallah, I may be even shorter than that, but 20 minutes is a good guide. Where should I start? This is, I do consider the unveiling of the secret of the Quran, which for many centuries pulled the interest and curiosity of many genius interpreters of the Quran, students of the Quran, and Orientalists about the so-called, let's say, Alif Lam Mim, or Kaf Ha Ya Ain Sad, or Qaf, and the initial letter combinations. I say letter, in fact, let me correct myself, letter and number combinations. In fact, their primary meaning is they were numbers. And unfortunately, the Muslim world have gone so far away from the Quran, teaching of the Quran, they have problem with numbers and mathematics. In their mind, if you ask scholar, God is very great literary being. The Quran is literary miracle, which if you ask few questions, they will end up confused and not being able to provide any objective standard for what makes something literary miracle. Why this book is not literary miracle? Why this is it? What is your objective standard? They are clueless. But they claim they understand God, a great literary being, but like them, enumerate, doesn't understand from numbers. In fact, it is perhaps the contrary. God is the greatest mathematician, Sari' al-Hisab, and created the universe on the language of mathematics, which is universal. Therefore, one of the obstacles in the Muslim world, the first reaction to this mathematical code in the Quran is negative. They have this prejudice barrier created by ignorant hadith narrators and the storytellers who had hard time with mathematics, because mathematics required rational thinking. There is no 2 times 2. According to this great alim is 3, but also according to that another great alim who is imam of this mazhab is 5, and according to this person is also 10, and guess what? All of them are haq, all of them are accurate. No, mathematics doesn't accept this kind of made-up stories. Therefore, they had problem with mathematics after, especially with Ghazali. They had problem with critical thinking, with philosophy, and later with mathematics. Therefore, your first obstacle, if you come from this background, you have problem with mathematics, with God's universal language. Therefore, you need to be aware of that, try to eliminate that. A second obstacle, misinformation. I hear many so-called scholars say, abjad system, geometrical value, is innovation, it has nothing to do with Quran and stuff. It's a big lie. If you go look at books written by mathematicians who have no agenda regarding abjad or Quran or our argument, they will have chapter on letters, alphabets used as symbol for numbers, numerals. For example, George Ifra's book, I highly recommend you, The History of Mathematics, is a big volume book, which one of the landmark literature on this subject. Interestingly, chapter 19 is about abjad system and other Jewish alphabet, and even previous some Roman alphabets, how alphabet were used for numbers. During time of revelation of the Quran and until the 2 centuries after Prophet Muhammad, Arabs or Muslims used letters in their alphabet system as numbers. When they got the Indian numerals, and then they improved it by adding 0, and then they transferred to Europe, it became known as Arabic numerals. After they adapted it, became much more useful. They gave up from old system, which is abjad, hawaz, hukli, kelemen, saafas, karashat, tehuz. 28 letters in that order, and progressively they each represent one number, 1 until 10, from 10 to 100, from 100, then from 200 until 1,000, and 28 letters exactly corresponds to these progressive numbers, and then you can put them next to each other. By their addition, you can generate any number you want. And they use that. History, we have archaeological evidence, we have consensus on this. This is not an innovation. In fact, today's Arabic numerals are innovations, and good innovation, I have no problem with that. But during the revelation of the Quran, it was used by them. Therefore, if the Quran, we should expect the usage of that numeral system in the Quran. This should be expected, not be surprised. Therefore, when we say Alif Lam Mim, the first people who read the Quran, who heard the Quran, they understood as 1, 30, and 40, 71. This chapter 2 started with 71. And also later, it has both mutashabih, means has two meanings, two purpose, and exactly we see there are at least two meanings and functions of these letters. They made a lot of speculation when they lost touch with the Quran, when they start following hadith and stuff. They start distorting the meaning, some keywords on the Quran. For example, the word ummi, instead of Gentile, they tried to make it illiterate. They made Muhammad an illiterate prophet, which is an insult to his intelligence or his intention. For 23 years, Muhammad would be dictating the Quran, which has 28 letters, but he's incapable mentally, intellectually, to learn these letters. This is insult to his intelligence or his intention, whether he intentionally, deliberately, he didn't want to try. Or the meaning of many other words, like khumr. فَلْيُضْرِبْنَ خُمُرِهِنَّ عَلَى جِيُوبِهِنَّ. The women, let them cover their clothes, dress on their chest. It doesn't talk about head cover specifically. And the word khumr in old Arabic languages, if you look even Lisan al-Arab, which is later written, it refers to the usage of the word. Khamara is used for carpet, for curtain, for hair cover, for this. But there's no specifically limiting with hair cover. And the purpose of this verse is not about covering the hair, it is covering, putting over the chest, not even lengthening down. It doesn't say, well, yudnina, fel yudnina, like the skirt, the verb is used. Anyway, there are many like this. For example, the word ayat in chapter 2, verse 106 is one of the worst mistranslation, distortion that created the whole idea, I would say satanic idea of nasakh, mansukh in the Quran, means abrogation in the Quran. That by this way they ended up saying this verse abrogating this one. But basically they claim there are contradictions in the Quran. In fact, they claim right now, for example, Hanafites believe that if there is Sahih Hadith contrary with the verses of the Quran, you should pick the Sahih Hadith because it explains the Quran. Quran is in need of these hearsay stories. Past that one. Therefore, you have many obstacles to be witnessing this one of the greatest signs. And when this came, when I witnessed this, I first heard in 1980 in a conference, International Youth Conference, from Ahmed Deedat. Ahmed Deedat had learned from Rashid Khalifa's work, had put together a beautiful pamphlet, Quran, the Ultimate Miracle, well-written book. He doesn't have really any research himself on it. He was not a research man. He was a delivery man. I liked the way he was talking. He's a great articulate man. And then I met him. I was first surprised because of this number when I heard. Because I was in a political youth movement. Today's Turkish Prime Minister and many other in cabinet, they were my colleagues, friends in this political movement. We were together in Akıncılar, Mezhepe, Milli Selamet Partisi. And meanwhile, I was one of the leading youth leader. And also I wanted to have my own group. And I established kind of from high school, I wanted to place them in certain key universities to have, we were fighting over control over the university that time with other youth groups. There was kind of like a civil war between us. And that time I established that group, I call it 19, Fatih 19, Victory 19, in 1978, 79, 80. And in 1980, I heard this, I was surprised. I had no idea that 19 is a special number in the Quran, or even the number of letters in Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim has 19 letters. I had no clue. That night, I thought about an originally interesting name. I said 19. Fatih was the name of the region, big region in Istanbul. Fatih means the victory, victory 19. And when I heard, this is my number, my friend even called me Mr. 19. I was prepared to have some interest. And then I was also engaged in philosophical debate with atheists, because there were also youth movement atheistic. And in universities, one of the arguments, whether there is God or not, whether the Quran is word of God or not. You cannot just get away. Why the Quran is word of God? Why? Because I believe so. I smell it. You are a big liar. You feel, but you don't really acknowledge it with intellect. You are not a witness. You are a pretender. A majority of Muslims are pretenders. They give lip service, I believe in the Quran, because they follow the bandwagon in that area. If they were born in United States or another Christian country, they would be Christian with the same methodology. They would be a good Hindu if they were born in India. They would believe, because if you ask them, they believe too. Why do you believe? Why? I never asked this question. I just believe so. Well, it is euphemism for following the bandwagon, the crowdest bandwagon, or the loudest one, or the shiniest one nearby. Therefore, it has no value according to the very book that you confess believe. The very book say you don't believe, you are a big liar. The very book asks you follow with question by questioning. Question your parents, your ancestors, the crowds. In fact, it says do not follow the crowds. وَلَا تَقْفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٌ إِنَّ السَّمْعَ وَالْبَصَرَ كُلُّ أُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ عَنْهُ مَسْئُولًا. This is methodology question. Now, this 19 when it came about, when I heard it, the letters of Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, 19 letters, the frequency of the words in it, multiple of 19, ism is mentioned in the Quran 19 times, but bism would be attached to it 3 times. At that moment, you have a 4th. If you want not to see it, if you want to close one eye while looking at random dot picture, I want to liken it to you. There is, how many of you seen these holograms? It's called holographic pictures, or yeah, it is kind of computer generated random dots. Initially, look at there's no picture there, but you need to stand a certain distance and focus on it in a certain way. Maybe get cross-eyed a little bit. With 2 eyes, you need to look at it, give possibility there is something there, and then you see it, it emerges. But some people may not see it, especially if you want to make mockery of it. If you have prejudice against people who see it, or you have learned something, random dots are bad. There are innovations. There are heretics. That cannot be random dots. If you have these dogmas, you will never be able to, because you will not be properly standing in front of it. You will not give a chance 5 minutes to focus on it. In fact, you will make mockery, you will close one eye, you say, I cannot see. You will never be able to see with one eye closed. Or you will turn your back, try to see it, or just not. Therefore, this miracle, when I say miracle, it is incredible miracle. I say one of the greatest event in history. I have discussed this with atheists. I have seen top atheists in the world. When I discuss this, they become incredible, bankrupt. I have a documentary will come, you will see. I have a debate with the president of American Atheist Organization. When it comes to this one, you will see how he's bankrupting. And you will see the head of the Skeptic Department, Skeptic Foundation in the United States, Michael Shermer. He's a great author. He's well known in the world about his books, and he writes columns in Scientific American. He publishes Skeptic magazine, and this guy, when it comes to that issue, he wanted to escape, he couldn't escape, and then at the end he says, I look like an idiot here, looking at the camera, 2 cameras, and I don't want this portion. I said, you are not idiot, sir, you are a very smart guy, but you are arrogantly trying to defend something idiotic. That's the issue. Here, This should be a great news for you, because the Quran says there are signs of the Quran will come in the future. When they asked Prophet Muhammad, show us sign. قُلْ فَانْتَظِرُوا وَإِنِّي مَعَكُمْ مِنَ الْمُنْتَظِرِينَ. Wait, I am also with you, waiting. سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ. We'll show our signs in the horizon and in themselves until it become clear that it is from your Lord. And the prophecy regarding 19 is exactly happening. Right now you are within that prophecy. And there are groups mentioned in that one after 19 as a response to someone claims the Quran is word of Muhammad, human word. It says some people will increase their faith, acknowledgement with this number. Some people will say, what does God mean by this? They will not understand. It will remove doubts in the hearts of some people of the book. But those who are arrogant and ingrate, they will not understand, they will reject. It will become fitna, a test for them. It is one of the greatest. Chapter 7, I don't want to give the list of these things in the Quran, like the number of chapters of the Quran. How many? 114, you all know. Why 114? Isn't there a purpose is there? It's not 100 or 99 that some Muslims like it, or 666, but 114. It is exactly 6 times 19. These are simple things. It doesn't make God's word, these things. But this is enough for you to be curious about and go to details. You will find it. It is incredible interlocking mathematical system. Language, human language, which is arbitrary. Mathematics, which is universal, interlocking system that makes it extraordinary evidence that this is God's word. Kitabun Marqum, the Quran called the Quran. Kitabun Marqum means raqam. In fact, in Turkish language, even people say raqam means numbers, numerals. This is Kitabun Marqum, numeric book. And why? Because this is the way we come sure 100% that this is word of God. Because for extraordinary claim, now we have extraordinary evidence. It is impossible, I claim, any human, all of you together, to make up a meaningful book, human language, integrate mathematics in such a level. I give you a few simple examples, but it goes, hopefully I will have a chance, I will give you just one example about how incredible detail it is. And also it shows beyond doubt that the Quran is protected, preserved, not by your ancestors, holy Sahabas and all those people who you idolize, who some of them made up many, many stories, false stories in the name of God. It's not protected by them. God protected the Quran through His own internal mathematical system, that those people who are endowed with knowledge, they will know it. It is in the heart of those who are given knowledge, they know the Quran. Quran is not paper and book. You can through this, it is not, it's a medium. Quran can be here. Quran can be in my mind. Muslims worship Mus'haf, paper and ink. Someone burned it, they think God did not protect it. If God's protection about the Quran, it cannot be paper and ink, because papers are torn. Many old manuscripts you see torn, ink messed up, or people can burn. God did not promise that He will protect material stuff. It is knowledge and information which is coded mathematically and protected mathematically. It is knowledge. And they worship this. But they go to bed, they cannot go bathroom with the Quran in their hand, correct? But if they memorize Quran, they go, brain is coding. Why you go to the bathroom with your brain? Okay, am I done? No. Couple minutes. Okay. Now, I have written this book on this. You don't need really to book this one. This is maybe made easy for the lazy ones, because the whole formula is this. Inspiration, the idea. This Quran, coded by 19. That's all you need. That inspiration that started this. Any person around the world can check it for themselves, even with the manuscript that we have today. You can be witness. When you become witness, you will not be the same as past. It changes. It changed me dramatically. It changed this lady. It changed, I don't know, some of you. But I have seen people dramatically change. What kind of change? It makes you first rational thinker. You will not be happy swimming in quagmire in the forest of contradictions. You will not accept contradiction as God's religion. You will not idolize your clergyman as intermediary between you and God. You will respect God and the Quran with the utmost respect. When you see a verse of the Quran recited to you contradict the teaching of this big alim or that big alim, the big God and their gods, you will choose this one. But I have seen Muslims, when I recite the verses of the Quran, they act like they're blind and deaf. I have seen many times, because they say, what about this hadith? What about this alim, this mazhab? Because their faith, so-called faith in the Quran, is a big lie lip service.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. We're doing it to move on to the next.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I need to.
Okay, that's good. We need to time.
It's being recorded here.
Just one more minute, I will finish. One more minute. I want to just give you examples. These huruf al-muqatta'a, these 19 not only gave us extraordinary evidence that this Quran is a unique book and protected by God. Inna nahnu nazzalna al-Qur'ana wa inna lahu lahafizun. This verse has the highest emphasis on God. And again, repeat, highest emphasis on God. Inna, one emphasis to God. Nahnu, we. Anzalna, we reveal. Al-Qur'ana wa inna lahafizun. Again, another 5 emphasis in a very short statement to God. It means what? Not you, not your ancestors. Therefore, some people ask me, Edip, you reject all these hadiths, our hearsay collection, which contains a lot of false insults to Prophet Muhammad, a lot of contradiction, insult to your brain. And when we give up these books, if you don't trust the Sahaba, then why I trust the Quran? They exactly say this in their heart. Then why I trust the Quran? Okay, say really, I really don't trust the Quran because of the Quran. I trust the Quran because I idolize some people of the past. They are exposed. Therefore, among you, maybe one person today will see the message, will hear the message. Not many of you. I don't have really much expectation, because the very Quran says it is a elimination, it is a test. لمن شاء منكم أن يتقدم لمن شاء منكم يتقدم أو يتأخر. For those who want to advance or for those who want to regress. Your reaction toward this one is very important, your first reaction. If you have good intention, opposite, not opposite, neither kind of gullible way, positive, possibility, objectively you look at it, there is no reason that you will not witness this one of the greatest, will change your life dramatically. But you can be the ardent enemy of this miracle. And you chose to be one of those who regress. Thank you.
Now, our second speaker. Okay. Our second speaker is Farooq, who is a PhD candidate in Islam and postmodernism, and he teaches Islamic studies at King's College London. He's a fellow of the Muslim Institute and runs the Quranist Network. The Quranist Network is an organization promoting Quranist Islam, Islam based upon the Quran as the sole source of divine authority. The Quranist Network does not promote any particular interpretation of the Quran, but rather acts as a hub of discussions where anyone can experiment with ideas. Their objective is to promote a democratic reading of the Quran. Farooq is the chairman of the Quranist Network. Farooq.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Welcome.
Thank you very much to the Muslim Institute for hosting this event and for providing a very delicious lunch over there.
I haven't tasted yet.
Oh, it's not yet. And there's actually a bit of a surprise there as well. I'll let you guys know in a minute. Thank you to Edip for sparing an afternoon to join us today. Edip has a very busy schedule. In fact, 2 days ago he was speaking at the European Parliament. So I'm very grateful for him to turn up today. He has to leave, I think, at 5 o'clock today or something?
Yeah, no, around 7 o'clock, is it?
Oh, 7 o'clock. Oh, that's
Yeah.
not too bad. Okay. Before I begin properly, I'd like to first say that from my point of view, this conversation about 19 is not a game of who's a Muslim and who's a kafir. I don't want to play that game. I'm here to give you my point of view on the phenomenon of 19. Whatever you choose to do with the Quran, that's between you and Allah. To me, Edip is one of the few people who actually stands up for what he believes in. He actually wrote a book called, I think it was Peacemakers versus Warmongers, where he basically fingered those people who were creating fitna on earth. And he has been in prison for his beliefs. You know, how many of us can really say that? So let's not play that game. Yeah? Let's take what we can, make our choices for ourselves, and apply the Quran in the best manner possible. So to me, this conversation about 19 is about two key issues. The first is maximizing the application of the Quran. We would like to maximize the application of the Quran because the Quran can bring us peace. And in doing so, we will achieve the goal set out for us by Allah. But I put it to you that the 19 theory is a distraction from this goal. It will take you into another focus, and you will be focusing on that instead of the application of the Quran. Worse still, it takes you away from the textual integrity of the Quran. For those of you who don't know, most proponents of 19 theory, I'm going to call them 19ers, they believe that two verses of the Quran, chapter 9, verses 128 to 129, are false. They were interpolated later. Now, to me, that's not a problem theologically. If you don't believe in that, that's fine. But it takes away from the textual integrity of the Quran. So when you read the Quran, you are not reading it as Allah intended, because Allah is passing you information while you're reading. You know, you're reading it in sequence. And when you stop where you're not supposed to stop, you're not getting the full picture. So that's another problem with 19. The second issue which I take today is Edip's language. Now, I don't mean that he goes effing and blinding whenever someone disagrees with him, so don't get that wrong. Rather, Edip's use of language is fundamentalist. Now, you would hear earlier Edip used the word objective. Objective is a very powerful word. When you use the word objective, you convince people that this is an unbiased opinion. Now, I have to strongly disagree with this. Don't get me wrong, yeah, it's fine to use, it's fine to believe that you're right. It's fine to believe some people are wrong. But to say that I'm being 100% objective, this is very, very difficult. Furthermore, it uses words like ingrate. And ingrate is just a very nice way of putting it, really. The actual word in the Quran is kafir. You are a kafir for not believing the 19 theory. So to me, that's very strong and very unwarranted. Now, there is a reason why Edip says this. I mean, I know Edip, and I know he's a very sincere guy. But he says this because he believes truly in the Code 19.
But by the way, I don't believe kafirs should be hanged or skinned and barbecued. Trust me.
That's okay. Yes, I agree. I know that. Yeah. Edip is, as I said, a peacemaker. He does not condemn people based on their beliefs. But there is a reason why Edip uses this language. Because he says that the Code 19 is objective. It's verifiable. It's falsifiable, scientific. It doesn't rely on circular logic. You heard it earlier. I actually got that from his book, 19, God's Signature in Nature and Scripture. Brilliant title. Brilliant title. I went through it just for this discussion. On page 10, he says, the evidence is 100% objective, yet paradoxically, it has a subjective prerequisite, akin to the prerequisite of keeping both eyes open. You heard it earlier as well, in order to witness a 3D picture. So in other words, it is objective, but if you don't believe in it, you're blind. So that's the kind of position Edip takes. I challenge this objectivity. I do not believe that 19ers are being objective. In fact, I believe they're being highly biased. It's a confirmation bias. They're trying to make the 19 theory work. And I will prove that in the course of this presentation. Now, before I proceed though, I would like to offer you an analogy, please, because this analogy will help you see where I'm coming from. I call this the black horses analogy. It works like this, basically. If every one of us agreed on the definition of a horse and the definition of the color black, and then we went around empirically verifying the colors of horses in the world, and we found all of them to be black. And we said, all horses are black. That's an objective statement. If you saw maybe all the horses in Asia and found them to be black, and you said all horses are black, that's a highly objective statement, but it has some subjectivity. If you saw only a few horses and you said all horses are black, that's a highly subjective statement and highly biased on top. So there is another problem. What if you don't agree on the definition of a horse? Okay, what if some zoologists say, oh, I'm sorry, I believe that mules and donkeys should be included in this as well. So then the definition is being skewed. So people are like, we don't have a proper objective definition, and what's going to happen is there will be disagreement. So here's what the 19ers do. The 19ers, they build you a stable. They put in all the horses which are already black, and then they say all horses are black. Sometimes they find horses which have white patches on it. So what they do is they paint it, and they put it in there and say all horses are black. Sometimes they find a carcass of a horse, chop off his head, which is black, chuck it in there, and say all horses are black. That is, unfortunately, the game which is being played. And I was highly surprised, because when I did research for this conversation, I didn't realize how subjective 19 was. But I will show you in due course. I've broken down the subjectivities into 5 different levels. The first is subjectivity of proposition. That is, does the Quran talk about a 19 theory? The second is subjectivity of calculation. How do you go about counting 19 theory? The third is subjectivity of perception. Does the Quran need a 19 miracle? Again, this is highly subjective, as you will come to see. The fourth is subjectivity of collaboration, using history to verify something which you already have a confirmation bias. And the fifth is subjectivity of rejection. What do you do with something which doesn't fit the code? So here are 5 subjectivities which we have to deal with. So honestly, I cannot see how 19 theory can be objective. Let's get into the first one. The subjectivity of proposition. Basically, does the Quran talk about a 19 theory? Now, for those of you who aren't Quranists, let me tell you a little bit about Quranists. Quranists are very meticulous people. When we research the Quran and we see the words hadith and sunnah in the Quran, we will ask the traditionalist, does this refer to the messenger? And generally it doesn't. So then we'll say no, then we cannot accept it. We see obey Allah and obey the messenger. And when traditionalists tell us this means obey hadith, obey the messenger means obey hadith, we say no, we can't accept it. Do you know where I read this? I read this from Edip's book, 19 Questions to Muslim Scholars. I was a very young Quranist then, I was just barely in my 20s. And I read it, and it made perfect sense. So Edip does rely on meticulous language. He does expect the Quran to be precise in its language. However, when it comes to the 19 theory, this criteria just flies out the window. If you look at the passage regarding 19 theory, it's chapter 74, verses 26 to 35. The initial passage is about God casting someone into hellfire and saying that over it, meaning over the hellfire, are 19. What does the number 19 refer to? It refers to the angels. So in this, I can't see a numerical code at all. The verse in question, chapter 74, verse 31, starts with angels as companions of the fire and ends with angels. The only way to manufacture it is to change the phraseology of the translation. And if we have time, I'll show you how Edip's and Rashad's translation differs from original translations and where the discrepancy is. Is there any mention of a code in that passage at all? No. The word for numerical system in Arabic is nizam adada'i. It's not there. The mention for counting system is nizam ihsa'i. It's not there. The mention for code is shifra. The Bible code is called Shifratul Kitabul Muqaddas. It's not there. So how on earth can we follow this if the Quran is unclear on this. Or maybe the Quran is clear, but it's not actually talking about a code. Now remember, the Edip quoted earlier, chapter 17, verse 36, which says, do not follow that which you have no knowledge. Therefore, only with the 19th theory can you have knowledge enough to follow the Quran. Would God speak about this fundamental verification system in this manner? I doubt it. I doubt it. Remember, it is Edip who says the Quran uses meticulous language. Yet for this, it does not. So, to go back to the black horse analogy, the Quran never said all horses are black. This was a manufactured hypothesis. Second subjectivity, the subjectivity of calculation. Now let's assume that the 19ers got it right for the first subjectivity. What about how to calculate the 19? What they have done is they have assumed a position of authority where they tell us how to count 19. And when we don't follow the count, we are called ingrates and whatnot. But let's ask the question, is there an objective way of calculating 19? Again, absolutely not. Now I'll show you. This is the count of 19 for Alif, Lam, Mim initial chapters. Yeah? Baqarah, Ali Imran, Araf, Rad, and so on. This is the initial, the count of those initials. And here is another version. This first version is by Rashid Khalifa, and the second version is by Rashid Khalifa. So Rashid contradicted himself in later calculations. And he didn't I mean, we're not talking about one or two contradictions here. Here I actually made a comparative chart. The contradiction is 90 for alifs. There were 90 less alifs in the second calculation, 57 less alifs for Ali Imran, 90 for Baqarah, and 57 for Ali Imran. Do we attribute these discrepancies to Allah or to Rashid? Or perhaps, do you know why it's alif? Because alif in Arabic, you can easily remove it and just put a fatah there. Just like Bismillah. You know, Bismillah, literally speaking, is Bi-Ismillah. But when you write it, it's just Basi. You see, it's the same thing, really. But because these people, they rely on the Mus'haf, the written copy, what happens is they have this problem. That's the first one. That's Rashid in himself. Now, let's move on to Alif Lam Mim as a system in itself. Let's accept Rashid's calculation. So he says in Baqarah, there are 4502 alifs, 3202 lams, and 2195 memes. And this is 9899, and this is 19 times 521. I mean, I don't know if this is accurate or not, but let's assume it is, right? This tells you that in one chapter, we should have a 19 divisible system of initials. That's a scientific law. He is being objective. Remember, he's being objective. It doesn't work for Hamim chapters. In Hamim chapters, none of these are 19 multiples. You have to add them up in order to make them 19. How is that objective? If it was objective, this would match this. It would fit in every single chapter, but it doesn't. And it goes even further than that. For chapters like Toha, what Rashid did was to rip out the Toh from the Toha, add it to the Toh from Maryam and the other Tohs. So he rips out letters and he adds them to make multiples of 19. So once again, you will find that unfortunately it is not objective. You don't see it and it's there. What you have to do is rip it here, rip it there, patch it up, patch the horse up. Is the horse black? Yes it is. Put it in the stable, all horses are black. That's what really happened. Right. Now on the issue of Bismillah. This is very important here, the issue of Bismillah. Now Edip claims it's 19 letters. And in his book, 19 God's Signature in Nature and Scripture, he condemns those who say it's 20 or 18 and so on. They deny God's miracle. So what does that tell us about Edip's system? That every letter is important. He calls it perfect preservation of the Quran. MashaAllah. That's really great. But when it comes to counting the number of Allahs in the Quran, he counts Allah, this is Alif, Billah, there's an alif there. Also lillah, but there's no alif there. So what's going on here? If every letter is important, why include lillah in the count? You can see there's no alif there. I've red marked all the alifs. Every letter is important. Yet when it doesn't fit, let's just close one eye and put it in there anyway. All horses are black. Right, and finally, I know I'm boring you guys with these examples, but I think they're very important. Now, next comes Rashad's criteria for removing 2 verses of the Quran. Now, Rashad says a number of words become multiple of 19 just by removing chapter 9, verse 128 to 129. How did he go about making that count? For the word count ilah, according to Rashad, there are 96, and if you remove 1, it becomes 95. But guess what? He didn't include ilahaka, ilahuna, ilahukum, so that's your God, my God, and so on, which in Arabic is actually one word. You see, he didn't include all this. Okay, let's assume that that's fine. Maybe you're not supposed to include. But for the word Rabb, he had no problem including them. He included Rabbana, Rabbukum, Rabbi, Rabbihi, and so on. And he removed it to make it a multiple of 19. What's so scientific about this? Why make fish of one and fowl of the other? So the reason for that is very simple. The reason is you want the code to fit. There is a confirmation bias on your part. And because of that, you claim it's the greatest miracle. So I don't know how I'm doing the time. Okay, well,
8 minutes.
8 minutes, okay, brilliant. Now, the third is the subjectivity of perception. Subjectivity of perception is perhaps the most fundamental subjectivity here. What do I mean by this? Yeah. Now, when you tell people that there is no miracle in the Quran except for the 19 code, you compel people to believe in this system. Edip actually says on page 21 of his book, Moses parted the Red Sea with his staff. Jesus cured the blind man with prayer. It's not a miracle, but merely a claim. Hearsay that would be rejected in our judicial system if submitted as proof of fact. If indeed such an extraordinary event occurred thousands of years ago, it was at best a miracle for those who witnessed it. For us, however, it is a narration. Edip loves prophecies. This is prophetic. In chapter 83, verse 13, it says, those who reject, and I'm not claiming you're those who reject, it's just a behavior pattern. Yeah? Those who reject, they say, these are stories of the ancients. That's what people say when they don't want to know what the Quran actually says. So, I think it's very unfortunate because Edip is a Muslim reformer. He wants to see Islamic reform. Yet, unfortunately, he has backgrounded the Quran. What the Quran actually says about its stories. Chapter 12, verse 111. In their stories is a lesson for men of understanding. It is not a narrative which could be forged, but a verification of what is before it and a distinct explanation of all things. A guide and a mercy to those who believe. This is how God speaks highly of His stories. That it is a detailing of everything. Tafsir, kulli shay. Yet, Edip says, no, it's a narration from the past. No. If you read it in a certain way, as a mathal, then these stories are highly applicable. For those who read the story of Moses versus Fir'aun, and if you don't see the reflection in today's society, then I really don't know what to say. Because to me, that story is alive, even today. So, I think I'm not going to have time for the other two, but I'm going to close right now, and we can open the conversation. So there we have it, yeah? The different areas in which the 19th theory is a highly subjective system. Now to close, I'm going to mention a quote about Rashad Khalifa. Again, this is not a disparaging remark about Rashad. Whatever Rashad did, I'm sure he was sincere about it. But this is a quote about Rashad Khalifa. Rashad Khalifa, in his later years, unfortunately lost objectivity. Rashad, in his later years, lost objectivity on the subject matter. He started diluting the amazing mathematical structure of the Quran by placing chapter and verse numbers next to each other in arbitrary or semi-arbitrary orders. As if there are any kinds of other kinds of orders, yeah? Arbitrary or semi-arbitrary. So this is an accusation against Rashad. Edip Yuksel made this accusation. So at the end, even Edip, who claims objectivity, says Rashad was not being objective. I don't know whether Rashad claims Edip was being objective. I don't know. All I know is I am trying my best to understand the Quran, And when I am faced with the 19th theory, all I see is a distraction from applying this message. Thank you.
We now have about half an hour of questions and discussion, then we'll have lunch and then we'll resume. If you wish to ask a question or make a point, please put your hand up. Can I ask each person to be brief?
I will disagree. I think this is fantastic criticism, and I am very grateful he brought these issues here. If we don't discuss this one by one or some of it, I think you will come out with absolute distorted idea. You will have painted pigs in your mind as horses. And I really do think that, in fact, the second part of this, because I think that when the light meets the darkness, that time you will see the truth. If you leave it this way, this gentleman will get away with many falsehoods, many distortions. And I'm not questioning his intention stuff. Absolutely, it is God, his judge. But I believe that he has confused many things. He is right on some of the things, but the way he presented absolutely wrong. And I would like to discuss some of these issues before we go to the question. I would like the second part, not about Islamic reform, because these are very contentious issues. And if we go on this now, and then the second part about question on this, that will be fantastic. What do you think, people? Okay, thank you very much.
We have a schedule.
Okay, this is not right. This is a trickery. Because I said something in general, I think. This gentleman from here and there picked some distortions, many with his, and some with truth, and absolutely present this way. If leave here, I will not have chance to rebuttal these things. Because what was my little presentation, because this new idea, you need a little bit presentation of it to these people who do not know. Therefore, this will not be fair. If you want fairness, if you want the truth become obvious to people, you should say yes. The rest of it we discuss, finish this one, and then later jump on another issue.
Fair enough. I mean, why don't we proceed straight into this now? And if
No, it will not be right because people ask.
You go ahead now.
Okay.
You go ahead now.
Well, what we could do is we could have lunch and then resume.
Yes, maybe give me half an hour to rebuttal this one, and then after that you could continue this issue
Okay,
after lunch.
what we'll do is we'll break for lunch. We will have lunch for half an hour, so from now till 1:30. We will then give Edip 30 minutes to talk further about the 19th theory before we open.
Yeah, respond this one, then we can open to questions. What do you think?
Yeah, I think maybe the examples that have been brought to the gentleman there about the countings, there were specific examples, and maybe we should see, for instance, an example of the counting of the word Allah.
I will discuss. I know about this issue. I wrote this book on this. I responded, these are generic things, distortions made. And this book, if you look at it, you will see how they paint pigs and then say horses belong to us. Trust me. But you don't need to trust me. Look at this. Here it is. Anyway, the cartoon says all about that. We'll talk about this, and I think that Brother Farouk will benefit more than you because I value him. And I like the way he presented because the wrong side he presented the best possible manner. MashaAllah.
Right, so we'll break now for lunch. We'll resume at 1:30. Give Edip Yuksel 30 minutes to talk further about 19 before we take questions from the floor. Thank you.
Free consignment. Before, I mean, I've had it.
Okay, I'll take one. Can I get one? Yes. Okay, Edip will now speak for another 30 minutes on the 19 theory, and then we will throw it open for 30 minutes for questions and answers from the floor.
Actually, I thought you wanted to have it in a conversation.
I need to read it, rebuttal, and then afterwards dialogue. Yeah.
30 minutes.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, gracious and merciful. Ar-Rahman allama al-Quran. God is the teacher of the Quran. And the Quran is a book that is an objective book, but is also 100% subjective, a very interesting paradox. 100% mubin, mufassal, but for those who have not pure heart, good intention. It is for them, it is confused, is not clear, as some people who have problem with the Quran, they will say, the Quran is not clear, I don't understand. Exactly this is what the Quran says. The very Quran is very clear for those who have objective mind, not negative, bad intention, try to find fault. But if you want to write fault in the Quran, you have negative intention, you will find many through mutashabi. The same with this miracle. It is 100% objective and 100% subjective. Like random dot pictures. If you don't want to see it, you will find many ways not to see it, many excuses. And therefore this is a test. When I see some people having big problem with this mathematical system, cannot see such an obvious things, it increases my faith even more. Wow! This is something incredible, divine. Something so obvious. As obvious that I can talk to you as I touch here and see this. Now, I have written this one for those arguments. And all he said, they are here and they are refuted with very clear evidences. You can see, and this book is also available on Amazon, but also if you cannot afford it through PDF, I can share with you. I had discussed this with Malcolm, Abdurrahman Lomax, Bilal Phillips. His arguments is refuted here. Carl Sagan, I had a discussion with him when he was before the era of internet. And also Ayman, he's also a very strong critic of this. And Michael Shermer and James Randi. James Randi really did not deal with it, but he kind of hurled a lot of insults. And here this expresses what is it. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim has 19 letters. But this is so clear. As an elementary school Arab kid who has no problem with this, has no pre-judgment, how many letters it is, write Bismillah, will count 19 letters. Ask Microsoft Word, Bill Gates. Put Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim exactly with the letters, Arabic letters. Not the arithmetical marks, which are not letters. They later added to help these gentlemen and me, foreigners, to pronounce it properly. They are not among the 28 letters. When you write it down, you will find exactly 19. Count the characters. You will find 19. It will not have bias. But I see Muslim scholars, even the head of religious affairs, two of them. One of them on TV, I discussed this, live TV in Turkish TV. He escaped twice from the studio. And he said there are 21 letters. There are some others saying 18 letters, some 22. This is exactly, says, how this gentleman sees. He says, how it is objective, these great alims, they differ on this. No, it is a very simple fact. Ask Microsoft Word, as an elementary school kid, is simple fact. In fact, Muslim scholars had no problem in the past about the number of letters in Alif. But when Bayinah came to them, there is a chapter about Bayinah, they start different on this. Check some of the previous scholars, they just, by passing, they mentioned about number of letters in Basmala, they said 19, all of them. In fact, 786, which is common in India and Pakistan, it exactly for 19 letters. It is geometrical numerical value of 19, not 21, 22 letters. But they want to add hallucination, black pigs, painted pigs into the things. And they say, well, it's not visible there, but from our imagination, we add one alif after that. Well, if there was alif there, the following letter would not be connected to that one. That is the way alif reads. Alif, the following letter cannot connect alif. This is the way you distinguish alif from lam. Now, I come to this gentleman, which I love him. We, in fact, together, we co-edited the Critical Thinkers for Islamic Reform. It was the papers of our conference. But on this issue, I find him, unfortunately, absolutely among those who do not witness Kitab al-Marqum. And I hope this will help him and you too. First problem says another focus and distraction. Says it focuses on numbers and stuff, not more a message of the Quran. Well, guess what? Through this, I am the most proponent of the message of the Quran, and I promote Islamic reform not in realm of just personal stuff, in social, political, and economic side. Not only me, those people who change, transform this, they are the most advocate of this. In fact, this gentleman and many others who opposes this, they got this message of Quran alone, paying attention to the message, every word of the Quran, through Rashad and me and most of these people. And I see that, directly or indirectly. Therefore, don't please accuse us, we are just indulging on numbers. I have written only one book in English on this, but look at other books, translation of the Quran, look at other books on social, we put together Peacemaker's Constitution. Look at that, it is a very painstaking, me and Lace El-Shaiban, together we put together. In fact, I discussed it in University of Arizona, political science, I said political philosophy department, which is #1 in the world. It is better than Harvard. It's considered by academicians, the best professors in the area. In front of them and in front of graduate students, I presented this Peacemaker's Constitution. I discuss it not as from the Quran. In fact, I have footnotes, hundreds of verses. I refer to those verses. And this is when I discussed, it was wonderful reception. There were few criticism, and I knew it. I took in consideration, that was my point. I worded differently, but this is something incredible, the message of the Quran. Therefore, please, these arguments don't make against us. We are not a bunch of numerologists and just lost in numbers, though numbers are wonderful. I wish there was some people lost monotheism on numbers. And textual integrity of the Quran, it's not textual integrity of the Quran. Distinguish Quran from Mus'haf, from the book that your parents write down, even can put margins in it, can put names, words in it, take it, make errors in it. No. In fact, the Quran proves the textual integrity of the Quran. Just one example. I will come to his about counting of edifs and stuff, and how the facts are confused with each other. And